am an immigrant from the Dominican Republic here when I was 16, and I started working immediately. At the age of 18, I had the idea of buying a home. I already had a 2-year job history.
Right.
I was somewhat ready. I had my credit score in line, and although I didn't feel ready, I saw the need of starting investing early. You have to understand that every penny that comes into your pocket cannot be from your labor. You need to have other sources of income.
A lot of your buyers, you try getting people as a first-time home buyer to entertain a multifamily. How does that conversation look?
Listen, your budget, have you thought about buying a multi-unit? You don't have to put that 20% down. Then you could get the gains from those other units that you will be renting out, and you might even live for free on that.
Show with Pat Lopez, where we talk everything real estate. Today, my guest is Ari Rodriguez from Mainline, KW Mainline. Welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Ari. I'm super excited to join you today.
Great, great. Okay, so we're going to talk about real estate. You're a real estate agent. So let's first start with your story. Tell me how you get started in real estate.
Sure. I'll give you a full background on how I got started on both investing and real estate. So I am an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, so hablo español también. I came here when I was 16, and I started working immediately at a grocery store. So since I was working since I was 16, at the age of 18, I had the idea of buying a home. I already had a 2-year job history.
Right.
I was already somewhat ready. I had my credit score in line. So everything was in line. And although I didn't feel ready, I saw the need of starting investing early because it's all about generational wealth. You have to understand that every penny that comes into your pocket cannot be from your labor. You need to have other sources of income. So for me, real estate was not a no-brainer. I got started, and because of the agent that I work with, Alina Stoliar, she told me, why don't you get your real estate license? And I was like, yeah, that's brilliant. Why not?
Right.
So I started working as a real estate agent pretty early on, 19 years old. I feel like I found a niche on my Latino community, first-time home buyers, and I have been really focused on helping them grow, not only economically, but also their knowledge base about the business, the investing, and real estate in general.
So how long have you been an agent now?
So about 3.5 years.
Okay, great. Okay, and then you said you deal with buyers, sellers, and investors, the whole book, right?
Correct, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so let's jump into, because you did mention, some first-time home buyers, and I always ask the question when it comes to that, what is the biggest obstacle for a first-time home buyer that you see?
So a lot of people are very skeptical about buying a home here because, especially for our Latino community, they feel like they never own the home because they have to pay their mortgage, then they still have to pay their taxes and insurance optional after you're done paying the mortgage on the property. So that's a misconception, and a lot of them are very skeptical about starting the process because they're scared about fraud. They're scared of the home itself and the responsibility that comes with it. So it takes a little longer to get them ready. But once you get them to feel comfortable, you assess their needs, you understand what they're looking for, and they see that you're really interested in truly helping them, not only on the financial gains that you're going to get from the sale of the property. You'll get them there, and they will follow through, and they will thank you, and they will be really happy about the purchase of the home.
So you say just people thinking that the possibility of actually owning, and just understanding, the steps and the process of becoming a homeowner, because especially what you just mentioned is, they never owned a house, and maybe where they came from, they never thought it was possible.
Correct. It's a new process to them, first of all. Second of all, especially when you come to this country as an adult and you have seen the process in your country being totally different, and then you're introduced to a whole new world, new financial terms that for us are everyday life.
Right.
But for them, it's pretty new. So you have to make sure that you take them step by step. I always tell people that when you're buying a home, you have a team. The team is, you're a realtor, you're a mortgage lender, and then yourself and your family, whoever you include in that journey. You have to make sure that you're choosing your players wisely. People that care, people that will take time explaining what everything is, and that don't leave you hanging around with questions. Because at the end of the day, this is the biggest purchase of your whole life. So make sure that you have people that care.
Right. Okay. And then you also mentioned about creating generational wealth, dealing with investment properties. What are people looking for as far as that's concerned? Are they looking for single family? Are they looking for multifamily? All of the above? How do you start?
So I love that question because actually in the last 1.5 years, to be exact, I deal with a lot of people around my age, like early 30s, late 20s. So those are usually the age group of my buyers. Of course, I deal with a lot of different ages, but a lot of them have come to me saying, you know what, I thought I was going to buy a single family home, but thinking about it, I'm not married yet. I don't have kids. I could do with a little bit of space. Why don't I buy a multifamily? As a first-time home buyer, you don't have to put 20% down because that person is going to be living on one of the units and rent out the other units. Because when you do decide to buy that family home for yourself, you can still have that income from the first property that you bought. So multifamilies have definitely been a big boom in the last year and a half.
Okay, and then now, how do you break down the home, whether it's a single family or a multifamily? How do you break down like the numbers to show if it makes sense? Because obviously, we'll just use your example. If you're living in one unit, eventually you may move out, and then the numbers would have to work, and the house would have to pay for itself. So how do you work with the client when you're having that conversation?
So usually before we even submit an offer, like we will look at the property. We will also revise the numbers, reports. How much would the monthly payment be? Look at the rental in that area. How much would, for example, if every unit has a 2-bedroom space with a bathroom, look at how much other units around that square footage are renting for, to make sure that your numbers are making sense. Because otherwise, if they don't make sense, then guess who's the responsibility is going to be? Your buyer.
Right.
So you have to make sure that you're assessing your buyer's needs, assessing those numbers, make sure that you're covering your bases so your buyer feels comfortable moving forward, because it will be a good investment.
Right.
When you look around, you will get capital gains, which is what you're looking for.
Right. And then a lot of your buyers, you try getting people as a first-time home buyer to entertain maybe a multifamily, because with that one, you could put your 3.5% down. You could put your 5% down. You don't have to put 25% down, where, once you own your primary residence in the future, if it's strictly an investment property, then you have to put a lot more money down. That's more difficult. So how does that conversation look like when you're talking to somebody, especially if they're single, like you just mentioned?
Correct. So usually I have a lot of, the majority of buyers, when they reach out to me, especially if they're first-time home buyers and they're single, etc., they're pretty open to possibilities, and they might not even have the idea of a multifamily. So when I'm assessing their needs, when I'm talking to them and they're telling me, okay, I'm looking for this area, this is more so what I'm looking for in the future, I'm thinking about renting that property and buying a bigger property when I do have a family, etc. So I mentioned, listen, with your budget, have you really thought about buying a multi-unit property? It will really be nicer, because you don't have to put that 20% down. Then you could get the gains from those other units that you will be renting out, and you might even live for free on that unit.
Right.
And covers the rest. So it's a no-brainer, depending on what that person is looking for.
Right. And then now, are people they welcome that conversation?
Yeah.
Now, do they ever say oh, I never even thought of that? Or
they love me even more after I mention that, because it's something that people don't normally think about.
Right,
when they're thinking about buying a house, single unit.
Right.
Usually it's all that comes to mind, right? So when I mention why don't you buy this multi-family unit, and then you can rent out the other units, and then again, it makes total sense to them. So it's like opening a whole new world to them.
Okay, great. Okay, and then what areas do you work? I know you're out in the main line, so do you work all the counties, Philadelphia? What's your footprint?
Right. So the majority of my deals happen in Northeast Philadelphia. I work heavily with my Latino community, and there's a lot of Latinos in Northeast Philadelphia. So the majority of my deals happen there. However, I do work also in Bucks County, Montgomery County. I have done a couple of deals in Chester County as well, Delaware County, and of course, like I mentioned, Philly, it's my main.
Your main. Okay, great. Okay, and then you also deal with sellers as well, correct?
Correct.
Listings,
yes.
and you mentioned that you had a couple of pretty big transactions, $1 million plus, which is for being younger, not to say you're young, but being younger, right? A lot of times it takes a little time to move up that ladder, because I guess people just don't take you seriously, and not you, but just somebody who is younger in general, right?
Yeah, usually that's I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's definitely a big wall that I have faced. And I'm pretty sure other younger, not only realtors, but also business women and men have faced. that you don't get taken seriously when you have a young face. But once you start talking and working with them, they realize how much you care about what you're doing and how much information you provide to them. And if you don't have the answer, you look for it, and you're always there, putting your face in front of your work. And that comes to be, your proof. You don't even have to, explain to them your worth, because they could already see it.
Right.
So I have worked with buyers that could be, no offense to anybody, of course, that could be my grandparents, and I'm still in contact with them, and they still recommend me. They still send me other buyers and sellers. So that says a lot. I have also done commercial properties. We have worked together with commercial properties, representing both buyers and seller. So the thing that I would say about that is just not being scared about exploring new things, doing new business, but of course, getting informed of, what's needed, what are the next steps, and of course, working with amazing professionals like you, that if I get stuck, like for example, on the loan side, my buyer asking me for advice, what type of loan should I take? Okay, we could call you and break down even more, because I might have limited information, but you're like a wealth of information because you've been on the business for so long. So having that resource has also been really helpful.
Right. So really you've covered everything, because you've dealt with first-time home buyers, multifamily, $1 million listings, because a lot of your background came from an office and even the main line as well, where the $1 million listings was like the norm. It wasn't anything like, this is, one in a million. It's like, it's right. If it's under $1 million, you sort of scratch your head saying, how did this get me here? So yeah, I know that was a lot of your background as well, and then also dealing with commercial properties and that kind of thing. So you're pretty well rounded. Okay, so great. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention? Because I do want you to give out your contact information if anybody wants to get a hold of you, buying, selling, anything.
Sure. What I would say to you, if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're a buyer in general. Since I bought my house when I was very young, I was very hesitant to ask questions to both Mike, which both were amazing. My realtor and my lender were both amazing. I was very hesitant to ask questions. Don't be. You have, like I mentioned, you have a team, so you have to make sure that your bases are covered and no question is stupid. Make sure that you are not left with any questions. That's what we're here for, to advise you, take care of you. So if you have any questions about real estate, loans, investments, whatever it is, anything regarding homes, mortgages, real estate, we're here for you.
Right. Perfect. Now, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how would they contact you? What's the best time?
Day, anytime, 7 days a week, 24/7 at 267-244-6680. Text me or call me. That's my personal cell phone number. It's always with me. And I also have my email, which is Ari Rodriguez at KW.com.
Great. Okay, so thanks for being on the show. I wanted to talk to you for many reasons, and just really understand your background, where you came from, and being a younger agent as opposed to being an older agent, just some of the challenges and some of your experiences. So thank you for that insight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really had a great time. I hope that our public enjoys this video, and I look forward for the next one.
Great. Well, that's the Real Estate Show with Pat Lopez. Be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Instagram, and of course, subscribe on YouTube. Okay, we talk everything real estate, no limits. Be sure to leave a comment. Tell me some show topics you'd like me to cover in the future, and I hope to see you next week, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Talk to you later. Bye.
Like and subscribe.